Aloha everybody and welcome to the Wild Wahine. This is Kaylani, and here today we are going to be talking about intuition and paranoia. So let's dig right on in. The first thing that I want to do is actually start off with a very textbook traditional definition of what intuition is and what paranoia is. So we'll start with intuition. Intuition is the ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning. So that really means a gut feeling, a general understanding of the outcome of something or the placement of something based on how you intuitively feel, feeling on the inside, as opposed to any information that you necessarily have about something. Now you can use intuition with information, which is basically I think what most of us do. We take information that someone maybe has told us or an experience that we had, and then we also put that together with our gut feeling. And I think if we do both of those things together, that actually is the best way to get a clear understanding of something. Because sometimes, you know, depending upon our experiences, if we have dealt with our negative experiences in a positive way, then when fears and things like that come up, we will actually make choices not about being afraid of something but feeling more empowered by the information that we have from them. The textbook definition for paranoia is unreasonable or irrational fear or belief that other people or something is plotting against you or trying to get you. That is a real feeling. I think a lot of times many of us have felt at some point in our lives that something wasn't right and that somebody potentially was against us or trying to get us, whether that be a person or a group of people. I'm not saying that if you feel that way at your job or within your family or within whatever system, then that means that you're paranoid. That's not exactly what I'm talking about. What I'm really making this video is to talk about everything that's going on right now and all of the mixed messaging that we're receiving from social media, from our friends, from everybody, and the best practices in using our intuition and kind of like combing through all of the information so that we can find the truth that works for us, as opposed to living and being in a place of fear and paranoia and anxiety, which a lot of us are feeling right now. So the next thing I want to talk about is 6 points of paranoia or anxiety or fear that we can identify, because if we can identify those feelings when they come up, we can recognize them being that, and then we can actually switch and then turn into our intuition, or at least acknowledge the fact that we're coming from this place of fear, and maybe the next decision that we're going to make or the next thing that we say or the next action that we take will be a little bit measured differently because we know we're coming from this place of fear and anxiety and paranoia. So the very first thing I want to talk about is what it feels like to be in a paranoid state. So the very first thing that comes up is fear. That's pretty obvious. It's fear, it's doubt, it's not believing that things are true around you. It's questioning the people that you typically trust. It's an overall feeling of heaviness and a feeling that something is going to get you. Someone is going to get you. You are not safe. The second thing that comes up are two things: is living or thinking about the past, or living and thinking about the future, and you can also do both at the same time. So a lot of times that feeling that you have is rooted in something bad that happened before and the potential of a catastrophe or something terrible happening in the future. You're not able to stop thinking about the past, the thing that hurt you, the thing that was not okay, and you're not able to think about how the future might be different or that these things can potentially happen. Now, sometimes you don't necessarily have traumas in your past, so you're not really thinking about the future in terms of the past, like what happened to me at this point is going to happen again. Sometimes you actually could have had none of those things happen to you in the past. You might not have experienced any of it, but you're thinking about what is the potential, what could happen, so that you can be like a couple of steps ahead and be prepared and not, you know, just be caught off guard, so that you would be in a place where you're not safe and your family's not safe, and all of the people that you care about and the things that you care about are going to blow up. That's that deep feeling of just not being in control of what may happen, that bad things may repeat, or something wholly originally horrible is going to be coming to you. The third thing is based more on a physical feeling, about physically how you feel inside when you're in a paranoid or anxious state. And that feeling is a very heavy feeling. It's a thick feeling. It's usually a feeling that doesn't make you feel happy or excited or a way out. It can have an excitability factor to it, in the sense that, you know, there is like an anxiety, there's energy to it, so it can make you feel like kind of like you've had 10 cups of coffee in some regard, but then after that you have that big crash where it's like heavy and it's depressive. A lot of times you think a lot of negative feelings, or you feel like very negative. You can be sick, you can have a tummy ache. It's very polarizing in a lot of ways, so there's not a lot of gray area in how you feel. It's either you're on or you're off, it's black or it's white. There's not a lot of discussion, there's not a lot of room for discourse. It's just like this hard no usually, or a hard yes, I know I'm correct. You're not really able, you don't want to hear anybody or even open yourself up, and like literally physically, like you might even physically like be more like your shoulders are coming forward and your heart is closed off. You know, you don't want to open up your heart, you don't want to be vulnerable, because you're protecting yourself for, you know, the terrible thing that is to come. Number 4 is obsession, or obsessive thinking about things. It is that kind of ruminating and that just circular thinking over and over again, that something bad is going to happen, that you will not be prepared, that you won't have what you need, that they're all coming to get you. It can have a delusional state to it, where you're actually envisioning of how the terrible thing can happen. You're looking at it. It would be almost like it could be a movie in your mind, a step-by-step, blow-by-blow description of what this terrible thing that is going to happen to you. So it does have this like obsessive, you're not able to let it down. It could be the scrolling through social media and finding things that actually back up the story that you're telling yourself. YouTube is a great place, even though my video's on here, but it is a great place to kind of go down that rabbit hole. It's a click after click after click after click, and next thing you know, you're in this like dark abyss of, I had no idea that like people even talked or discussed about these things. You're looking at things that are truly frightening for you, and you're not able to look away or pull yourself out of it. Addiction, actually, at that point. Number 5 is looking for answers outside of yourself. So a lot of times when you have this anxious or delusional thinking, you don't trust yourself. You don't feel like you know the information. You don't feel like you're intelligent enough or woke enough, or even just have access to this greater knowledge. So you're looking for people and you're looking for information outside of yourself to corroborate the story, or this little lead that you just had about what really is going on. This is especially prevalent in the conspiracy theory kind of world and community, where people set themselves up as, I know what's really going on. People are coming to me telling me stuff. I have a contact at the CIA, whatever the kind of sort of thing is that people are telling you that they know. They're setting themselves up as an authority. You no longer are an authority about what's going on. Someone else is an authority, and you are trying to track them down and read about them and read and watch more videos to try to figure out what's going on, because they, which is a person who usually doesn't have any sort of actual authority, they're just people who claim that they know, or people who say that they know because they have some information, but they can't share that, of course, because it's hidden and their life would be in danger. So it creates this completely closed loop where you can keep going around and around, and you'll never find an answer out, because there's always an excuse as to why facts can't be shared, sources can't be shared, and so forth. And so you're just constantly looking for someone else outside to tell you the truth and to enlighten you with what's really going on. Number 6 is that you're quick to anger and hostility. Now, I did make a video about anger and how you can use anger. It can help you and actually motivate you to get yourself out of a place from being a victim. So I will put that below, and maybe I'll put it at the top of this video as well. But what I mean by this, in terms of, this is one of the negative aspects of anger, where it becomes self-destructive and it can be destructive to people on the outside. A lot of that energy is moving outward. It would be Mars energy, like Mars in Aries or something like that, where your energy from what's going on, you finally feel like you have all of the information, and it makes you angry, and it makes you feel frustrated, and you can't believe that you live like this, and you can't believe these atrocities are happening, and you can't believe that no one is taking action, because there is something in this whole like paranoid and also community groupthink that happens with people who are involved in the conspiracy theory, anxiety ridden, media and storytelling, that there is a bit of a call to action at the end. And there is this idea that these things are happening and nobody knows it's happening, and therefore no one's in control of it happening and able to do anything about it. So you should do something about it. There usually is something like that as you get fully deeper in, and especially if you start networking in some of these communities. So one of the things that people do is they feel that anger and they start to act out in that anger, and they start to verbalize that anger. The social media tends to be a very safe place for that, where people can kind of just like lean into people and just let them have it. Some people take it a step forward and they do that in their community, and some people will take it forward even more, and they will react in a larger way, and that's when you see things like terrorism and other like large scale things happening. So that is something to be really careful of as you're going through these things, and if you're suffering from being involved in a situation that's causing a lot of paranoia, anxiety, and delusions, that it can evolve to something where that anger and that frustration and all that feeling gets pushed out into the world. Next, we have 6 points of intuition. These 6 points of intuition are different than paranoia. A lot of them are the exact opposites, but these 6 points will help you determine when you're in a situation and you have feelings come up and you're trying to decide which one is which. Hopefully these 6 will help you out. The very first way is usually a feeling of trust. There's an overwhelming kind of warm feeling that happens when your intuition kicks up. It has this feeling that you are looking within and you're trusting what you feel, and you don't have a lot of doubt about it. There isn't any fear. A lot of times there can be a very neutral feeling, but there is a deep sense of trust that you have in yourself before you say something and before you act and before you do something. The second thing that comes up when you're trusting your intuition is you're tend to be in the present moment. You're not so much thinking about what might have happened in the past or what's going to happen in the future. You're really in a present state. When things come up for you for your intuition, you're thinking about all of the ways that you can do things right now. Typically you're walking down the road and then you feel something that says, oh, I really need to go here. Actually, don't make a left here, or I need to call this person to see how they're doing. It's not a jarring feeling. It's a very present feeling. It's not something that dwells in the past, that thinks about how things should be. It's also something that doesn't necessarily come up in the future. Usually intuition, when it's popping up for you, especially in the decision-making sense of like, should I do this or shouldn't I do this? Or how do I feel about something? If you're watching something and you see it, it's all about the moment that you have right now, like your gut feeling about what's happening in the present moment. It doesn't really have oftentimes a results-oriented kind of idea. The result obviously is almost always you being okay and you being in a safe space, but it's more about like what is the action or what is the feeling that you have right now, as opposed to making plans for how something's going to be in the future. Number 3 is your feelings. So you obviously have a lot of like physical feelings, just like you do when you're dealing with paranoia and anxiety. When we're talking about intuition, you have a lot of physical feelings that come with that, and psychological feelings. So it usually feels like a very light energy. It's not loud, it's not like glaring. Typically it's an inner knowing. It's something that's quiet. For some people it can be an actual voice. And I don't, necessarily know if it's like your voice or your higher self's voice, or, your spiritual guide's voice, or if you believe in any deities or anything like that. I can speak for myself and I can say I do, hear a voice, my own voice for the most part. And it's kind of sort of like a, don't go there, you should really do this today. It's nothing that sounds like out of the ordinary. It actually is very, very matter of fact. There's not a lot of feelings that are associated with it. It's very neutral. It doesn't come from a place of fear. It's usually not a, oh my gosh, I heard a voice, I'm freaking out. It's not like that at all. It's just as if you were going through your list for the day, like, okay, I need to go do laundry. What do I need to get? I need to, get laundry detergent. I need to get quarter. Whatever it is, it can actually be quite matter of fact. And that was the thing in the very beginning that kind of pushed me to the side when I first started thinking about intuition and was I intuitive and if that was something, because it's, for me, it was so natural and so matter of fact and so much like, okay, what do I need to do today? Or okay, I'm going to the grocery store, what do I need? Like, that's literally how my intuition works. It's so subtle, it's so with me all the time that I didn't realize. I thought it was going to be this thing that was just like, you need, you know, like Gandalf, you shall not pass, you know. No, that is not. I mean, maybe for some people, and that's awesome if you hear Gandalf when your intuition is talking, but mine isn't like that. Mine is actually just me just saying something very matter-of-factly. And I think because of the fact that it was so matter-of-factly, I just ignored it, you know, at the time when I wasn't really like tuned into it, because it just seemed like so simple and so much myself. There wasn't anything magical to it. And I think that's really interesting, because in that way it's like the exact opposite of paranoid thinking, which really feels like it's not part of you. It really feels like it's this whole other feeling or this whole other entity that's kind of like sitting on you and sucking all the energy from you. It can be a light tickle. Sometimes it doesn't have to come across as like the voice that tells you something specific. That happens. I also get a tickle. I like to call it a tickle. The tickle is just this prickly feeling, you know, that just doesn't feel, it either doesn't feel right or it actually feels like, oh, okay, I need to do this. I like to call it spidey sense. You know, but there is that kind of quality to it when you sit down with somebody and you're just like, oh, that's off. That's just something that in you that just didn't feel like that person was being, you know, genuine in what they were saying, or that there was something, there was like a veil behind them and what they were saying, you know. That's something that comes across too. A lot of times realize that about myself, that I would have strong aversions to certain people. I thought that was something wrong with me, that I wasn't being like loving enough or accepting enough, and was I being like snobby, because I had been called that before. And, you know, I kind of trusted what other folks said, especially in my younger years, and just, you know, kind of telling myself that I should be a much more loving person. And, you know, why am I so like just put off by some people? As I got to be older, I realized because that was energy that wasn't working for me. It didn't necessarily mean that the person was bad. A lot of times they were, I will say that, but sometimes it just wasn't an energy that I wanted to be around, or it wasn't, that just what, it just didn't feel right to me. And trusting that is really important. And if you share that with other people, sometimes they will say that you're being snobby, or you should be open, or how could you know that? You know, I've had somebody say that to me too. You know, how do you know that this would be the situation? And I was just like, I just know. And they were like, well, people don't normally know that. And I think it's just one of those things where you have to trust yourself, you know, do your own science experiment with yourself. You know, you can not listen to your intuition or that gut feeling for 5 times and see what happens with that. You can listen to it for 5 times and then see what happens with that. So this is something that you can play around with. This is not something that, you know, we don't always listen to our intuitions. I don't always listen to my intuition. I mean, obviously, I'm human. Sometimes we just want to do what we want to do despite what that inner self says, and then, you know, a lot of the times, you know, I'm, for one, you know, reap those consequences of that. So currently in my life now, I would say like I listen to it about 90 to 95% of the times, and the other 5% of the time is just being a stubborn ass. But, you know, I found that when I started listening to it more, my life started flowing in just a completely different way. And I just didn't have as many obstacles as I normally have. Number 4 is it's specific. Before we were kind of contrasting it to that obsessive feeling that you can feel when you're in that kind of paranoid state and you're thinking like all these bad things are happening and you're watching all the conspiracy theories. So typically when you're like in a deeply intuitive state, it's actually very specific and it can be creative. If you find yourself already in a situation that is not so great and you're feeling into your intuition, you're like, how am I going to get myself out of this? It's a great way of like problem solving and being creative in terms of how to get out. Or if you're starting to feel that like, you know, paranoia coming up, like a lot of times, because it still will. I mean, just because you're deeply intuitive doesn't mean that you don't have moments of paranoia, especially if it's something that hits at your core wound. If it hits at your core wound, you're going to be like feeling all kinds of things. So sometimes if the first thought is paranoia and I'm having that kind of feelings, what'll kick in is that intuition, which is much more creative, and it has like a web creation type of effect of, okay, how am I going to get out of this? Okay, if this is the thing that's not working for me, what can I do to, you know, find a way to get on the other side? side. So it's a very creative, it's a very like problem solving kind of energy. Instead of feeling like, oh, the problem's gonna squash me, it steps up to the plate and says, okay, well, how can I find a way out of this? So it's much more of an empowering feeling as opposed to feeling like I'm completely powerless, the whole system is against me, these group of people which run everything in the world is going to do this to us and we're going to be microchipped and like whatever, and all of the conspiracy, you know, everyone knows what we're talking about here. Like, and again, like, there's a strong possibility that some, and I believe a lot of conspiracy theory, maybe not a lot, I mean that's being generous, but I believe that there's truth in many different things, but we also still have to function in our world and be responsible people and like show up and do the best that we can, especially if it's a situation that we don't have a lot of control over. So we want to be aware of things that are happening, but we also don't want to, you know, be on that opposite side, because remember, like, when all of these ideas are coming out and all of this information is coming out and all of the conspiracy theory is coming out, not 100% of the conspiracy theory is true. Maybe about 10% is true and the other 90% is there just to mislead you and misinform you. So you're trying to figure out which one is the one that you believe reasonably from your gut feelings and from your intelligence, which is very important. Very important. You're putting the two together and you're trying to figure out a way out without like getting to a place where you're immobile and you're not able to do anything and you're so depressed, or you're so angry and so frustrated that you're kind of blowing everything up and hurting yourself and hurting others, which is not good. Number 5 is looking within yourself for the answers. So we're contrasting that with the paranoid feeling where you're looking outside. It's all about finding like somebody who knows, or finding that person who set themselves up as a person of authority. What happens when you're using your intuition is you become the person of authority. So we get back to that place of empowerment where we know what's best for ourselves. I'm not saying that we know what's best for the world, because that's different. That's a whole lot of people that we ourselves and our little intuition would know about. I'm really talking about for you personally. And then if you're a person who like runs a business or has a family, if you have people that are under you in some way, then it would be for you and your group. But it's really looking within. If it's for you, it's looking for within. If it's a group, it's looking within with everybody. So if you are in charge of a group, which is a family, it could be a business, it could be a spiritual community or something like that, then I believe it's very important for you not to just only use your intuition for the group, but for you to ask everyone else to use theirs too, and for all of you to talk about it and discuss it and see what comes up. There is a lot of gray when you're dealing with intuition. It's not necessarily always black and white. Sometimes it can be like that, especially if it's something that's dangerous for you. So if your body's in physical danger, or if your mind is in physical danger, then it could be very black and white. Like, this is a good person, this is a person, I don't want to define people as good or bad, but this is a person whose energy is going to align with mine, and that's going to work in this way, or I'm going to learn a lesson, or this is something that's going to be a detrimental thing for me. So I do believe intuition can come black or white, but when we're gathering information and we're using intuition as a way to kind of figure out what's going on, that's when we want to deal in the gray. That's when we're actually like looking at what's going on, we're talking to other people, we're getting many different sources, we're talking to somebody that's completely outside of this and saying, hey, what do you think about this? A person we know would laugh at us, you know, or think that it's like weird, but just to get their opinion, just to see. So you're using your knowledge. You can ask outside. It doesn't mean that you don't ask people and you're not doing research, but the buck stops with you. It doesn't stop with the other person. It doesn't stop with the YouTube video. It doesn't stop with the person who set themselves up as an authority. It stops with you. You can gather everything and then you take it in and then you decide what you're going to do with your information. So it is a coming in as opposed to going out. 2 things that you can do in terms of going in. One is meditation, which everybody talks about all the time, but I think it's a great way to be able to gather information and then really just sit with it and see what happens. It can actually be a very slow process. It doesn't have to be this quick moving process unless you have to like make an immediate decision. It can be something that you're taking your time with. The other thing that's really good if you're trying to figure things out and you're wanting to use your inner knowing is using a divination practice such as astrology and tarot and oracle card readings and all of those other kinds of readings and fun magical things. A lot of times people find them incredibly helpful. I know I do. Obviously, I'm a tarot reader, so you know, when a lot of times I have so much information in front of me and I feel flooded by so many things, obviously I'm like pulling cards and I'm seeing, you know, okay, what's the answer? And again, in terms of the way that I read tarot, I believe that the answer is always within. Sometimes it's just shrouded in a lot of like mystery and a lot of self-doubt and other things. But when I see the card, it's giving me a visual and it's giving me like an archetypal answer to something that usually I already know inside. And number 6 is the energy. We're contrasting that with the paranoid thinking, which was quick to anger. When you're intuitive, you're quick to listen. You're quick to take energy in. If there is a quickness, I mean, I also think intuition can be quite slow. I love it when it's slow. Sometimes it's not very convenient. You know, sometimes you need to know something. And I do believe if the body is in a situation where it's unsafe, like you're walking down the dark alley, you just entered this person's house and they closed the door and you're like, everything about this does not feel good. I need to get out of here. I think it will work immediately. I don't think you're gonna be sitting in a situation and you're just like, where are you, intuition? I'm waiting for you to come. You know, that's not what happens. But when you're kind of comparing and contrasting a new idea, when you're trying to make a decision about something, when you're trying to decide whether you want to invite somebody in with your business or if you want to, you know, take it to the next level in a relationship, like a love relationship with somebody, or you're trying to work out how to problem solve something, that is when intuition can take its time a little bit. It's something that can happen over time. You can think about it. You're, you know, going within. It's not necessarily something that is, you know, quick to go on the outside or quick to anger. It's very level-headed. Again, a lot of times it can be quite neutral. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's this like super positive, like, oh my gosh, like, yes, you know, I'm cutting this person off tomorrow. Like, that's not how it works exactly. I mean, maybe for some people it might work that way, but you know, for the most part, it does have a little bit more of a neutral emotion to it. Thank you guys so much for joining me here at the Wild Wahine. I just wanted to say I have this YouTube channel and I also have an Instagram at @the_wild_wahine. And I'm a tarot reader and astrologist, so if you'd like to book a tarot reading or astrology reading, you can always email me at kaylani@thewildwahine.com. And if you guys have any questions or any comments, please post them below. Be sure to share this video with somebody that you think might need to get more in contact with their intuition, or if you think they're coming from a place of fear or they're struggling a little bit with what's going on in the world with all of the information and conspiracy theory, this could be a great video for them too. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you next video.